Namaste everybody. Welcome to the 12th video in the overall series and introduction to Sanatana Dharma. Advance greetings for Deepavali, by the way. Let me begin with that. Also greetings on the occasions of Dhanatrayodashi or Dhanteras, Dhanvantari Jayanti, Dhanvantari the god of healing, and also Naraka Chaturdashi. If possible, for this Deepavali, please try not to burst bombs. I'm not asking you not to burst, not to have fireworks. Light, flower pots, fantastic. Bombs, not always pleasant. So please try to avoid those if possible. Today, as we discussed earlier, we will be touching upon the concept of Sahasranamam after discussing the concept of Nama in general, Nama or Namam in general. Today, we will be touching upon Sahasranamam. And before that, there are one or two topics I wanted to touch upon. Let's get into the video. By the way, I have tried to do the Sandhi Vichhed for two shlokas at the end in the last two slides. If you're interested, you can just have a look at that. Let me start with correcting two aspects. One is that in an earlier video, I had mentioned one statement as Kalau Samsmaranat Muktihi. It can rather read as Kalau Smaranat Muktihi. Broadly, the meaning is still the same. In this age of Kali, the Nama Smarana is sufficient. Nama Smarana is sufficient to bestow liberation or Mukti. However, it can be read as Kalau Smaranat instead of Samsmaranat Muktihi. Then Vasudeva, if I remember correctly, the Vasu aspect I had described as the concept of God being present everywhere in creation. That is not wrong. However, it goes beyond that. In Hinduism, there is this concept of Sat and Chit. Sat means the concept of existence. God just is. Whether there is creation or that cycle of creation has ended, God exists. So this state of being is called Sat. Chit basically refers to consciousness, knowledge. So this Deva basically means Swayam Prakasha, he who is bright or resplendent because of himself. He is not dependent on something else to be resplendent. This Deva or this resplendence, I think that's a term, refers to this Chit or consciousness aspect. Vasu refers to the concept of just existing, being, always present, Sat. So Vasudeva refers to Sat and Chit, the concepts. It also obviously means the son of Vasudeva, but that's a later meaning which came out as part of the Krishna Avatara. Otherwise, Vasudeva refers to the Sat and Chit concepts of God. Then, Diwali is a very popular term. The technically correct term is Deepavali. Just wanted to put it out. Diwali is not wrong. However, it is derived from this Sanskrit word Deepavali. Now, whether you want to pronounce it as Li or Li, I leave to your judgment. However, Deepavali basically means a row of lights. So, if you can pronounce it, and since it is not a very complicated term, the term Deepavali is generally preferable to Diwali. Second aspect. I see that, so whether it is Sri Rama, Krishna, obviously the entire nation, all Hindus in this world worship Sri Rama and Krishna. However, generally one small observation that I have made is the concept or the logic behind the festival of Deepavali is given as the return of Rama to Ayodhya, more commonly in the north, and the death of Narakasura in the south. So the only thing I want to point out is because I think there are people in the north who are not aware of this story of Narakasura, and there are people in the south who are not aware of this concept. So I just wanted to put forth both so that people are just aware that both concepts exist. One is Sri Rama killing Ravana and returning to Ayodhya. So the residents of Ayodhya and more lit lamps. Another aspect is Narakasura was in fact the son of Vishnu in the form of the Varaha Avatara and Bhumata Bhudevi. He was their son. But obviously he was not a very, later in his life, he was not a very gentle character, a very good character. So Vishnu in the Avatara of Krishna killed Narakasura. So after his death, the beings of the world, the devas and gods and human beings lit lights because Narakasura had died. So both these stories exist behind Deepavali. I just wanted to put both these things out so that everybody has ideas of both these stories. Now, going ahead. Now let us come to the core topic of Sahasranamam. First of all, it is Sahasranamam, not a Sahastra. It is not Tra, it is Ra, Sahasra. Okay? It is Sahasranamam, not Sahasranamam. Now, Sahasra can mean 1,000, or it actually also means infinite. So, the qualities or the concepts that are related to God are said to be limitless or infinite. So, in Sanskrit, Shata, Sahasra, these words can mean a specific number like 100 or 1,000, and can also mean infinite. Therefore, Sahasranamam basically talks about the infinite aspects of God that are brought to us in the form of maybe say 1,008 names. But basically, it refers to God being an infinite concept, something which cannot be described very simply in words. That is the whole idea behind Sahasranamam. Now, please note one thing: Sahasranamams are only for Vedic deities. Uh, I don't know why. I may be wrong, but I think what you're seeing in the brackets is also happening of late. However, Sahasranamams are only for Vedic deities. Any modern deity or whoever is not mentioned in the Vedas cannot have a Vedically accepted Sahasranamam. Okay, so there are a lot of Sahasranamams available today. Vishnu Sahasranama, which came from the Mahabharata, where Bhishma on the bed of arrows, uh, uh, say, spoke about this to the Pandavas, led by Yudhishthira. Then there is the Lalita Sahasranamam, I think from the Brahmanda or the Brahmavaivarta Purana, where basically it was a conversation between Hayagriva, an aspect of Vishnu, and the sage Agastya. Then there is the Siva Sahasranamam. I think it is mentioned in the Mahabharata, where Krishna, in fact, talks about the Siva Sahasranamam. Then there is the concept of Ganesha Sahasranamam, Kali Sahasranamam, Lakshmi Sahasranamam. So Vedic deities can have Sahasranamas, which basically talk about various aspects of God, limitless aspects of God in terms of words or names or adjectives that we normal human beings can understand. Now, the benefits of Sahasranamam, in fact, we discussed this or we touched upon this a little while back. Upanayana, Diksha, Sandhya Vandana, Upadesha, Diksha, these are not very strictly needed for a Sahasranamam. That way, the benefits of following yajnas, the recitation of the Vedas, the benefits can accrue to us without the prerequisites being there. So the Sahasranamam offers the benefits of, say, the Vedas or yajnas without the prerequisites to everybody. There are no restrictions in terms of who can chant the Sahasranama. The Sahasranamam is open to everybody. There are some basic recommendations like to maintain a basic level of purity, cleanliness, and all. Those are obvious because we are talking about God. However, the prerequisites like what we've listed here, right? That you need to have the Yajnopavita, you need to do your Sandhya Vandana every day. You need to take a Guru Upadesha, an Upadesha from a Guru. You need to be initiated into a Diksha. These requirements are not there for the Sahasranamam. That way, the Namam is brought and made accessible to everybody, literally in creation, through the Sahasranamam. Also, the Namams in the, so I am listening to some videos on the Vishnu Sahasranama. So there are various ways the Namas in the Sahasranamam can be used. One, Dhyana, basically you meditate upon the meaning of one Nama or obviously multiple Namas. Then Stuvan, Stotra, you can just read it or you can just chant it. Namaha. So basically what can happen, for example, the first shloka in the Vishnu Sahasranamam is Vishwam Vishnur Vashatkaro Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu. So Vishwam Vishnu Vashatkara are three namas. Now I can do dhyana saying, okay, Vishwam, these are the meanings of the word Vishwam. That's dhyana. I'm meditating upon that. I can simply chant it. Vishwam Vishnu Vashatkaro Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu. Third aspect is Namaha. I can say, I can do puja, for example, saying Vishwaya Namaha, Vishnave Namaha, Vashatkaraya Namaha. So I will just suffix this Namaha, Chaturdhi Vibhakti for you, Vishnave Namaha, Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhave Namaha, like that, Namaha. That is Namaskara. Or there are certain ways of doing a yajna or a specific kind of japa yajna, puja, different kind of yajnas using these Sahasranama. So there are four broad ways that we can look at: dhyana, stotra, namaskara, yajna. So there are four ways by which the namas in a Sahasranama can be utilized. Okay. Now, what are some of the concepts that are described in any Sahasranamam. It can be, so we took a few names earlier, right? Vishnu Sahasranamam, Lalita Sahasranamam, Shiva Sahasranamam, whatever. There are some concepts that are common across all the Sahasranamas. For example, the physical form of the deity is described. For example, in the Lalita Sahasranamam, the eyes of the goddess are described, her hair is described, the physical form can be described, incarnations. For example, if we take a Vishnu Sahasranamam, there is talk about Narasimha Vapuhu, which is the Narasimha Avatara, Vamana, Varaha, Govinda, Krishna, Rama, Ramo Viramo Virato. So Ramaha, these are all incarnations, they are described. Then Leela. Leela is a concept basically where there is a certain story, but there is a hidden meaning. The concept of Leela must not be applied to human beings. Leela is a divine term. So Leela basically means, so Krishna Leela, obviously we would have heard this term, right? Rasa Leela, Krishna Leela. The story shows something, but there is a hidden meaning behind that story. This is what Leela means. So Leela is typically related to an incarnation. So these are described in the uh, Sahasranamas. Then essence, tattva, qualities, Upanishad concepts. So Upanishads talk about Advaita, right? That there is nothing but God. These concepts are also, tattva basically means certain very, it's a little difficult to describe it just like that, but they are some very core aspects of a deity. Uh, See, there is this concept of Saguna and Nirguna God. Saguna basically means God with a form or qualities. Nirguna means without form. Now, obviously, you cannot worship something which is without form. However, there are some aspects, for example, Anadi Nidhana. So basically, which means which does not have end or beginning. So these are certain qualities which are not necessarily associated with a form or a physical shape. They describe something which is formless, and they are occasionally abstract concepts, but these are also dealt with in the Sahasranamas. Then secretive aspects. The Lalita Sahasranama, in fact, the one name for the Lalita Sahasranama is the Lalita Rahasya Sahasranama. So these are not simple dictionary words. In fact, that concept where you cannot translate a simple Sahasranama, the Nama from a Sahasranama using a dictionary applies to a lot of Sahasranamas, or in fact to all Sahasranamas. So, however, the Lalita Sahasranama, for example, talks about certain concepts like Kundalini. These are secretive concepts which are not to be generally described to everybody, right? So, some of them are mentioned here. But the beauty, again, of Hinduism, the overarching unity in Hinduism, the beauty is all the Sahasranamas, whether they are for Vishnu, Lalita, Shiva, Lakshmi, Kali, whatever they are, ultimately talk about same things. For example, in the Vishnu Sahasranama, we see the namas Rudra, then probably Sipavishta, Shiva, Sharva. These are typically associated with Shiva. However, they are mentioned in the Vishnu Sahasranama. Basically, what these mean is, irrespective of what name you give to the deity, ultimately all are but forms of the one. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti is a very famous Hindu statement associated with Hinduism. So basically, God is one in Hinduism. The various names of deities are but various aspects of this unity. That way, irrespective of what Sahasranamam you pick up, the overall concepts refer to that single essence only. This is one of the most beautiful aspects of Hinduism. Going ahead. Now we come to the last two slides of our videos today. Now, what are the benefits of going or chanting these Sahasranamams? So we discussed something earlier, right? That all the Sahasranamas talk about the basic same concepts. Then we talked about dhyana, stotra, or maybe archana, then namaskara, yajna. These concepts are present without the prerequisites of yajnopavita, of the sandhya vandana, diksha, upadesha, right? The benefits that are associated with all of those, doing a yajna, chanting the Vedas, can accrue through the Sahasranamams. And what are these benefits? Material and non-material. I have taken two shlokas from the Vishnu Sahasranamam, just for illustration's sake. So when we say material, they refer to the various material benefits that we want in this world. For example, this shloka, if you look at it, it says dharmarthi prapnyat dharmam, which basically means the person who's seeking to follow dharma, attain dharma, can obtain dharma. Artha arthi, artharthi, cha artham apnuyat, artharthi cha artham apnuyat. And the person who is seeking wealth, any form of wealth, will attain wealth. Kaman apnuyat, kami, any kind of desire. The assumption is it is a dharmic desire. Kaman vapnuyat kami, prajarthi chapnuyat prajam. Possibly this means that he who wants progeny, praja, right? Apnuyat prajam. So basically, whatever it is that you are seeking, something dharmic, hopefully, is attainable through the Sahasranama. Now, this shloka and the one in the next slide are taken from Vishnu Sahasranama. Now, if you notice in this particular shloka, broadly, all of them are related to material benefits, dharma. Obviously, dharma should give us material benefits and benefits in the benefits after death also. Artha, wealth, desires, progeny. These are all material benefits of this. This is just an illustration, by the way, not exhaustive. Now, this shloka, for example, talks about material benefits. Now, let us take one more shloka from the Vishnu Sahasranam itself. These two shlokas are part of the Phalasruti, which basically means it is not the actual Vishnu Sahasranamam itself. These two shlokas talk about the benefits of chanting the Vishnu Sahasranama, for example. So these two shlokas are part of something called the Phalasruti, which basically talk about the phala or the benefit of the Sahasranama. This shloka says, rogarto, sandhi, rogarto, uchyate, roga, somebody who is suffering from a disease, various kinds of disease. Hinduism talks about two diseases, by the way, Adi, Vyadhi. Vyadhi is a disease associated with the body, physical body. Adi basically refers to psychological or non-physical, so to say, diseases. Rogarto muchyate roga, baddho muchyate bandhana. Now, this can actually be taken as a non-material benefit also. In fact, roga also, there is a term in Hinduism called bhava roga. Bhava roga basically means the disease of existence in this world. So, roga here can refer to the adivyadis or in fact even bhava roga, or basically the disease where you don't have mukti or liberation. You are born in this world, you are bound to this world. So this shloka, for example, can talk about the non-material benefits. Roga to mujhte roga. He, mankind in general. Rogartha basically means he who is suffering. Artha basically is referring to somebody who is suffering from a roga will be released from that. Baddho muchyeta bandhanat. Bandhanat basically means from bondage of any kind. Bondage to wealth, bondage to material desires, or bondage to the samsara, the world creation, material world in general. Baddha muchyeta bandhanat. Bhayan muchyeta bhitastu. Bhayat muchyeta bhitahatu. He who is afraid of whatever, of something material, samsara in general, will be liberated from that fear. Muchyet apanna apadaha, from any kind of trouble. So this shloka, for example, as we discussed earlier, can refer to multiple levels. All these difficulties can refer to worldly difficulties or specific things, right? Somebody is in financial difficulties, somebody is in health-related difficulties, can refer to those, or they can refer to the overall scenario where they say that, see, all these troubles are but manifestations of troubles that have come out because of being born in this world. So the Sahasranamam, for example, the Vishnu Sahasranamam, for example, gives you dharma, artha, kama, praja, and also moksha. That way, the Chaturvidha Purusharthas, the four primary aims of life, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So any Sahasranamam, for example, is said to be able to bestow the benefits, all these benefits. Again, let me reiterate, attainable through something like a yajna or some kind of Veda or some very specific rituals or specific activities which require a lot of initiation, but without having all those prerequisites. That way, Sahasranamams, let me reiterate, give a lot of benefits without a lot of prerequisites. in the next video, because we've been talking about names, Nama, then we spoke about how not to name a kid or how to name a kid. Today we've spoken about the Sahasranamam concept. In the next video, I will be touching upon certain names that are associated with Hinduism. Once again, festival greetings, Deepavali, Dhanatrayodashi, Dhanteras, Naraka Chaturdashi, greetings to you that are associated with all these festivals. Please be careful with fireworks. To the extent possible, please don't burst bombs. Have fun with sprinklers, flower pots, so on and so forth. Please take care. Thank you for watching this video. Namaste.